You want me to put that on my Tudor?
The war is over. No, I'm not going to launch into a rendition of John Lennon and Yoko Ono with the Plastic Ono Band and the Harlem Community Choir, Happy Christmas, war is over. Although you might think that would be the appropriate response with the title that I've just mentioned. Instead, I'm going to take you to a Sky News Australia news item written by Nicholas Shepherd that tells us the war is over. He lost. Failure of Prince Harry's PR crusade will be clear for all to see on Coronation Day. Now, as we know, we're always going to get some straight talking from our Antipodean cousins. That's what we love about them. And here, Mr. Shepherd tells us, the royal war is over. Harry lost. Pausing there, it's important to remember that Harry is simply a pawn of his wife, and therefore the suggestion that he has lost is also to suggest that she has lost. The article continues by stating it's easy to reduce the principles in royal dramas to caricatures. In reality, even with the likes of Harry's wife, there are complex interpersonal connections, neuroses, histories, and grievances. But in entering into public power plays, manipulations, and airing dirty laundry, smearing, with revelations and confessions dubiously intertwined with revenue-making, residual benefits, being no-holds-barred authentic, but quite performatively aware of the cameras, they also invite a fair bit of satire. During the royal fallout, the establishment faction of Charles and William took the conservative approach, relying on the entrenched goodwill towards the institution, taking the longer view, which is always the best bet when it comes to such royal dramas. All the while they maintained a clockwork schedule of duties, adhering to that enduring royal motto, never complain, never explain. This approach, which everyone knew would inevitably be the successful one, also had the subliminal effect of undermining Harry and Harry's wife's assertions about survival and escape, and being on their psychological last legs. Pity plays. Dramatic notions a little hard to square with the balding jeans-wearing dad posing with his 3 kids in holiday photo shoots, the kids hoisted into trees beaming with gap-toothed smiles, or Charles sauntering about with Camilla at church services and examining dialysis machines. The pincer movement of the redoubtable establishment and the ruthless satire of contemporary pop culture icon South Park effectively meant Harry was going to achieve a kind of public catharsis for himself and ample financial security, but in the bigger picture, come off second best. Along the way, the prince, and, by extension, of course, it follows Harry's wife, has made some fundamental errors. In the late 90s, Princess Diana was raw and confessional, especially in her interview in which she revealed there were 3 in that marriage, so it was a bit crowded. The distinction with her is that while coming from a fairly upper-crust background, there was a wholly different order of magnitude in terms of joining the firm, so she was a commoner, inveigled at a tender young age into an institutional machine for which she was simultaneously the brightest straw and the least comfortable and integrated. Millions of everyday magazine readers were compelled, initially, by the classic fairy tale scenario, the notion of her as an ornament to society, and later by the idea of her as a strung-out, hampered, emergingly independent woman from a different world, the princess trapped in the castle. The collapse of the marriage and sense of her straining to reinvent herself further raised her astonishing profile. All of this stemmed from her initial outsider status. Harry has a few of those elements. The spare younger brother, the lack of modern sympathetic wraparound care for which he can claim a legitimate extent of grievance, and the sting, by association and out of solidarity, with murkily unclear racial bias in relation to his wife. But it's not anywhere near the same scale or intensity of that endured by his late mother. He lost a parent at a vulnerable age, but plenty of people have endured that. He lived largely overshadowed by influential and powerful figures, but plenty of people do that too, and it isn't necessarily reliant on class or affluence. Many families have powerful and domineering patriarchs or matriarchs who can be lower, middle, or working class, and who still imbue decades of family life with resentment, psychological complexes, and division. Pausing there, it's worth pointing out that many of those patriarchal and matriarchal individuals are likely to be narcissists and can be found within any socioeconomic grouping. Continuing with the article, they don't get buck deals or buckings on TV shows. His father was inadequately muted emotionally when delivering the fateful news. Grievous, no doubt, but almost 2 decades is sufficient time to process that, especially with the old man himself, and discreetly put it to bed within the sphere of family, where such intimacies belong. Relating how your older brother spurned you on your first day of school, saying how you were not to interact with each other in the school grounds, practically every older brother since the beginning of formal education has laid out that dictum to their younger brother before reaching the school gates. Why air it on a talk show? Well, we all know. Harry has been manipulated and brainwashed to the extent that he believes it's right and proper to air all of this dirty laundry. He has been manipulated and brainwashed into believing, all of a sudden, that he is a huge victim. His wife, operating through her own victim status, has caused him to believe that he's a huge victim also. Hitherto, he didn't think in such terms. He recognised, of course, that he was very badly hurt by the death of his mother. But he got on with things. It's only when the spider has come along that she has placed the idea into his head. Harry, you're a victim. And then that idea takes hold. And in order to please her, and also because then she takes hold of his narcissistic trait of resentment towards his family, she exacerbates it, pouring poison in his ear on a daily basis. And who is he going to gravitate towards? The individual that is going out there and providing him with lashings of spicy poontang has apparently saved him, enabled him to understand who he is, and the person that he now has married and lives with, or people who are being displayed as problematic, who are not responding to the provocations, that they are remaining in that position of never complain, never explain. He, of course, is going to listen to his wife above everybody else, and thus he accepts the label of victim and behaves accordingly, feeling that it's right and proper to ignore boundaries and talk about it on talk shows. The article continues, I think a lot of people genuinely like Prince Harry, who had a troubled youth, performed admirably through his military service, and pushed down a lot of enduring pain. His initiative, the Invictus Games, is noble indeed. But onlookers also, at least a latent or at a half-conscious level, feel there's something quite passive-aggressive and unassertive about addressing his father and brother through the media, which is to some degree what the whole publicity tour was about. Like an adolescent TikToker who will drone on histrionically about dramas and slights suffered by a contemporary, rather than actually engaging with and having it out with their cafeteria tormentor, there's a kind of keening quality to it. Underneath the immensely relatable, likeable, and let's face it, highly media-polished exterior. He also made the mistake of being too revelatory. Again, this of course was encouraged by his wife as she hung him out to dry, as I've explained in parts passim. If I can rig up an analogy here, full nakedness can be both gratuitous and banal. But a Sports Illustrated photo spread in which the model is 95% nude is for consumers who have a penchant for perusing that illustrious publication tantalizing, enthralling, and even sophisticated. What generates such an appeal for the royal family is the speculation, the not quite knowing the titillating semi-insights, the spectacle catalysed by gossip. It only works if at least some of the reality is obscured. Prince Harry went 100%, relating practically everything without irony or filters, so that much of the inner workings and inner drama actually came across as benign. There was a scuffle with his brother that culminated with Harry falling onto a dog bowl which broke. This is the family of George VI, who stayed in Buckingham Palace during the war, despite the palace suffering bomb damage 9 times. Apparently, Harry and his father had a long phone call prior to Harry's journeying over for the coronation. To the extent that I'm invested at all in this family, I'm glad, at least on a basic human level. But with a quick in-and-out scheduled, and without his wife to accompany him, and in a spectacle in which he will be back in his familiar minor role to the side, while more important forces are turning around him, and with his favourability ratings lacklustre, it will be clear that his little PR war is over, and he lost. And by extension, it also means that his wife has lost, because she has been forced to stay away, her narcissism protecting her against the perceived threats to control. However, whilst they have lost with regard to this PR battle, she will not see it as such, and she certainly isn't going to go away anytime soon. That is the fact of the narcissist, that she has an unconscious sense of ownership over people, whereby she believes, subconsciously, that she has an inalienable right to keep returning again and again and again, to draw fuel from people to control them, to get those character traits and residual benefits. It is both a strength and a weakness of the narcissist that they cannot see that they have failed, so they keep trying again and again, sometimes succeeding thereafter, but that is not going to be the case for Harry's wife. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.